Oh, right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from, and welcome to AI Paper Writing Clubs by Machine Learning. I'm super excited. I'm very happy to have you here today. Okay, this is a great opportunity to connect together and learn about AI paper writing club. Okay, so when we are talking about AI paper writing, what's AI paper writing and what is it all about? So this initiative is brought by the Google AI developer programs, and the main idea is for us to discuss, is for us to learn more about research paper writing. As we all know, that research is the background for AI and the background for every single thing we do. Research is powering machine learning in different aspects. So for in the next 2 weeks, we are going to look at we'll be having more speakers. We are going to have other people who will be joining us to share things from from different perspective and different walks of life. So today, without much wasting of our time, our speaker is already here, who is going to take us on a very interesting topic. I'm super happy because he's the first speaker we are going to have. He's the first speaker we are going to have, and to briefly introduce him. Okay, so it's with great excitement and honor that I welcome you all to this special session of the AI and ML paper reading club. Today we are privileged to host an extraordinary speaker, a thought leader in the AI and cybersecurity, as well as cloud computing as well. Kelvin A. MC Girl, also known as Camp. Okay? Camp is a Google Cloud Fellow and a principal evangelist at Ditto, where he helps organizations navigate and secure their cloud environment. His work in the field of AI and ML and Google Workspace has positioned him as a Google developer expert and an expert member of the US Marine Corps Cyber Auxiliary. Beyond his corporate contribution, Cam is a long-standing open source advocate and a proud member of the APAC Software Foundation. His relentless fight against spam and cyber threats has protected hundreds of millions of internet users worldwide. In recognition of his lifelong efforts, he was awarded the prestigious Mary City Lifetime Achievement Award this year for his contributions to internet safety and cybersecurity. Today, Cam will take us on a deep dive into advanced generative AI features for Google Workspace. He will walk us through some of the most powerful techniques using Google Gemini AI to enhance technical writing, research paper writing, research automation, and content generation. This session is a must attend for anyone looking to harness the power of generative AI for smarter, faster, and more efficient research and document creation. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, Kevin MC Girl, aka Cam. So I'm super excited to have you here, Cam.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Victor.
much. Thank you very much for honoring this invitation. I really can't wait to hear from you. I will be hearing your story and as well. So I'll be going. Yes, so can you tell me about the things you do, maybe one paragraph about yourself to inspire people out there?
Well, I mean, for me, I think it's just really about loving computers. I've been very pleased to use AI for a long time. I've been using AI now since the mid 90s, and the chance to talk to a group that has
Wow.
a TensorFlow as their logo and whatnot is fantastic. I love to teach on AI. I love to use technology, cloud expert, as you mentioned, and fight against bad actors and all of the nastiness that's on the internet that makes it unsafe. So i don't I don't know, there's a whole lot too much to it. I think you read one of the it's very
I mean,
embarrassing as for me to have all that stuff read about me, even though it's all true. So
it's not embarrassing. It's really encouraging. So at this point, I'm going to step on the background so you can have your presentation. Thank you very much, Cam.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Victor. My plan is over the next roughly 60 minutes to teach you everything you need to know about research paper writing. Now, this is a brand new slide deck. This is all material based on the latest from Google. I am going to do live demos, etc. We'll talk about that as we get down. But I wanted to give, really this group a foundation in some of the advanced stuff that Google is doing around generative AI and what you can do very quickly to accelerate both your ability to research things, learn things, and also to write papers. So a little bit more about me. I won't go over, but I do have my LinkedIn profile down there. I will be showing the sausage, meaning I'll share my whole screen and jump between things. I won't go into a lot of the advanced techniques. This is a very advanced group, so I'll mention some things. But I do other trainings. I have another one coming up on Wednesday, so I'll put links to that later on when we get to that point. So, if I go too fast or anything like that, don't worry. I do more of these trainings and love talking. All right. So, the first thing I want to start off with is a little bit about Gemini AI for Workspace. For the most part, we're going to stay inside of the Workspace environment. Workspace is Google's suite of office tools and productivity. So, I thought the first thing I would do today is I would just start off with a little bit about Google's strengths. And I have to go ahead and I think present again because I don't think I presented with the audio. Let me see if I can get that to work. Whoops, I turned off the camera. I didn't do present. All right, let's see if we can get this to work. Share screen, share screen. Let's do my video. Also share audio. Okay, good. Audio is shared. So I thought I would talk a little bit about the, kind of the state of Gemini AI for Workspace. So Google's big strength has always been over its last few years, the ability to collaborate. And I think that over the last few months, we have seen a shift in that, where I think that in addition to the collaboration, which is still enormously good, we're going to see the integration of uh, the AI tools as one of the number one features. There is a ton I could teach. We are 7 days away from Google Next. I anticipate there'll at least be 100 updates next week. So there's a lot coming. I thought I'd start us off with a little funny video. Let's see if I can get it to play. There we go. Gonna find us. We'll leave the world behind. So a little bit of humor, just kind of showing the integration, the collaboration, the control of your data is key. And for me, I think what you're going to see today is just continuing that strength that Google has. Google has 6,000 AI engineers, the most of any company in the world. They were definitely not, really. I think at the point of their game where they thought a lot of the products they were working on, I think, were too early to introduce. That got proven wrong. So we'll talk about it. Some good information for those doing research. Oops, I have somehow started the video again. No, there we go. All right, so a little bit of just general starting point. So the biggest problem that most people have with working with AI is they're using vague prompts. Draw me a dog. For example, sometimes there's some benefits of that. I do like to mention that I use vague prompts where I'll tell things like create me a paragraph, and I'll see what it does. Maybe it gives me a jolt of something else I want to do. Maybe it's some ideas. Now, Google does have some ideas of what they call prompt enhancement. Well, they'll improve it. But anything involving prompt engineering is basically half science, half art. And this is a wonderful, concept that Google does. I have the prompt engineering guide in the resources at the end, so you don't have to write this down or anything like that. But there are 4 things you want to make sure that you're doing when you write any prompt. You want to cover the persona, the task, the context, and the format. And these different things will greatly affect your output. So, for example, if you're using something like the Code Assist product and you're having it write a program, you might want to say something like, "I am a beginner programmer." So there's your persona. Write me a program that does XYZ. There's your task. Your context would be, to connect to a Google Cloud storage bucket with this username and password. And then the format might be in Python. And then you can get specific, like version 3.0. And it's those kind of things that, you think about. It's like, well, if you just ask it to write a program, what language is it going to write it in? And you can start adding other things like with full debugging, with, et cetera. And I have stopped using syntax guides for programming because I can just ask the code assist to tell me how to connect to something. The code may not be perfect, but it'll probably give me 15 lines and I make a couple of small tweaks and I'm off to the races. But, I love this quote from my colleague, Peter Goldthorpe, and I won't read it out, but I think it's very true. Think about things that are very repetitive that you can give very good instructions to do that need to run a lot. That's where you're going to find it being very useful. Additionally, a couple more thoughts on AI. I do talk about ethical AI a lot. I teach on it. My definition of ethical AI is really when a human can recreate the decisions of the computer. As I like to point out, data is the new oil. And you're not seeing things like Google getting sued for misusing data, while a lot of other companies are. And that's because Google has spent decades, ethically handling and getting data. You may not like Google, you might not agree with everything they do, but they don't misuse data. And that's something I'm very proud to say about. A lot of other class action suits and allegations, don't support other companies in the same situation. Additionally, everything I'm going to show you today is all using a license for Gemini. That's included with any business or enterprise license for Google. They're adding it as well to other SKUs, and I'll talk a little bit about how you can tell if you're using a licensed version. But from a compliance standpoint, and this applies not just to the U.S. but worldwide, there's some key points that Gemini really doesn't have to be considered for a compliance or a security standard because it's built on top of Workspace and it acts just as the user. And because it's doing that, it's always within what we would refer to as the authorization or protection boundary. No humans review the data. There's no training on the data when you use a licensed version. And the only thing they do is support the user, and the data is ephemeral. And so with those points, you don't have a concern that Gemini is going to be a security concern when you're using a licensed version. If you don't know how other tools are working, I definitely would recommend that you stay away from them. All right, let's talk a little bit about Docs and NotebookLM and Gemini app. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the slides. I'm going to share my whole screen. I hope this isn't too disconcerting to people, but I'm going to jump back and forth to a couple of things. And the idea here is to kind of, show you exactly how I would do things. So, all right. So you're into my slides. You can see everything behind here, how the sausage was made, etc. And we're going to show 6 features to start. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new tab on my browser, and I'm going to just type docs.new. This is a great feature. Google uses the top level domain of .new, so you can create things. And as you can see here, I now have a brand new document. One of the things that I do like to use in my documents is I do like to use the font Atkinson Hyperlegible. I am, losing a lot of my eyesight. It's heavily damaged. So, the better I can read is great. One of the things I like to point out about Hyperlegible is, like, for example, let's say you have a password that has special characters in it. Am I in here? Where's my cursor? There we go. And I'm going to type a 0 there. And so, like, the Atkinson's Hyperlegible focuses on being easy to read. And let me make it even bigger for those on the presentation. It also has things like, for example, a 0 versus a capital O versus a lowercase o, a 1 versus an I versus a capital I versus an L versus an L versus a pipe symbol. There are easy indicators of what each of those are. So now you don't have to worry about what's going on. But that's an aside, little just trick I like to learn. I write most of my things in Atkinson Hyperlegible just because it makes things easier to read. But let's talk about some of the features that are in here. We're going to talk about 2 of the big AI features, the help me write and elaborate. So over here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull out of my document. I'm going to pull my actual meet the speaker slide. I'm going to pull all of my information from that, and I'm going to paste it in here. And now I'm going to go ahead and do some quick stuff. I'm going to go ahead and highlight part of it, and I can bring up Gemini over here, for example, and I can ask it to do some stuff. Like, I can ask it for it to elaborate. And I think I don't even have to tell it what I want to elaborate. You can also do like this little help me click thing. You can ask it to rephrase it, shorten and elaborate. So I'll ask it to shorten this and whatnot. Heaven knows what it'll do with that information, but it does a pretty good job. So here's a shorter version of it. I put it in the middle of my document, probably not that useful. But hey, if you're looking for a shorter version, a great way to do it. These type of tasks are really, really simple. There's also the ability to do more research, and you can also do things like the help me write that comes in that can help you just get started on whatever you want to do. So help me write, I can go ahead and give it the instructions, and as you can see here, it's prompting me create a brand marketing manager, persuading customers. Well, I can do all that, but let's do something a little odd. Let's show you one of the building blocks. Now, all of these building blocks aren't AI necessarily, but I want to show you some of the stuff that Google is doing that are AI driven that are extremely good. So meeting notes is fantastic. It integrates with your calendar. It'll pull up who was at the meeting. You can do a lot of great little things with it, but I'm going to show off one that I like. I'm going to show the email draft, because this is really useful in just so many different conversations. I'm going to go ahead and email somebody. Let's email my head of marketing, David, and I'm going to email him a something about the t-shirt for next. And I'm going to be like, help me write a message about picking a t-shirt design for Google Next 2025. And I'm just going to hit create. Now, the key thing that I love about AI is it's not a database. I'm going to show you some other stuff later on. Oh no, it can't write that one. All right, let's try create one more time, just see if it does it. Sometimes I do find that, yeah, if you just click it, they're just out of the various things. They're out of resources on the back end. But you'll see that if I click insert, I'm going to have an email block. It actually did it as an email block. It was smarter than me, and it did it. You might be wondering, what's an email block? And I'll tell you that you can write an email, have it all drafted up. And again, I can't find David. There he is. you can click this little M button, and that'll pull it over to a draft message in Google Mail. So think about, this is just one more little block that you can have. You'll notice, by the way, it did a subject for me. It wrote some text and got me what's going on. There's other integrations as well that you can ask it. I'm not going to go into all those. I want to focus on research paper today. So let's go back to our slide that we're on. So other things you can do, word counts. There are tons of building blocks. There's also concepts of smart chips. And this is going to be very important as you start to do things. So, for example, you can hit the @ symbol and you can start bringing in different concepts. You can add building blocks. You can add files. You can add people. All of these type of things can be very good. So let's try just typing the word outline. And let's see, research paper writing. Here's a link to my actual outline. I now have a little summary of it. I can ask it to summarize the file and bring it in so I know what's going on. So start thinking about the fact that you can make a Google Word document. You start bringing in your information. You can think about like starting to write notes. You can make a kind of a super table of contents, all of the materials that you're grabbing, etc. You can have it summarize them if you forget what each one's about. Lots of cool stuff. You'll notice this is very seamless. It's all contextual. I brought in a chip. It asked me to summarize it. It's over here in this little side panel very, very quickly and whatnot. And so you can see what it's doing. But let's move on. That's a little bit about docs. Next thing really is about NotebookLM. So NotebookLM is basically a multimodal research assistant. Now, many of the people here are experts, but for the people who aren't, I do like to mention that modal is basically, just think of modal as different ways to interact with the data. So in text, in a video, in an image, those are different modes or modals that you can interact with the image or interact with data. And you have to start thinking about the fact that everything AI isn't just text-based. And we're in a really neat world where you're going to be able to do some cool things like have the camera be able to point at things and tell you about what's going on, all while you're doing it. Have it do screenshots of your machine and have it get data about what's going on. Point the camera around. I mean, I've been using these features for over a decade. I love it when I'm traveling. Point it at a sign in another language or a menu in another language, and it can translate it to English on the fly. So what we're going to do is we're going to use NotebookLM, and we're going to go pick a YouTube video, and we're going to ask it a question. So NotebookLM, I'm using NotebookLM Plus. You can see that I've got the plus up here. That means I'm using a licensed version of NotebookLM. That means I have no concerns about the data privacy, as I mentioned earlier. Let's go to YouTube. And I'm going to be honest, I know very, very little to nothing other than a little about the city or Uyo, Nigeria. So let's, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but let's see if we can find what looks to be a video. Let's see if we can find an introduction tourist video for this town. Now, I'm in the middle of doing a presentation, and I don't know that I have time to watch a really long video. Let's see if we can find something that's a little longer. I'm not finding a whole lot, but here's one. It's 10 minutes and 15 or 42 seconds long. I don't want to watch this while we are on this call. So instead, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go down to YouTube. I cut the link. You may not have seen me do that. So here's that video. Now, I've never watched that video. I did that search live right here while we're on the call. In the background, effectively, my AI research assistant has now watched that video. I can now interact with it and ask questions. And you'll notice, by the way, it is giving me hints about it being the cleanest city, et cetera. Let's ask a question. What are the top 3 reasons to visit EO? I think it's EO, but don't quote me on that. And, in real time, I'm going to get back answers. Cleanest city in Nigeria, impressive sights and attractions, provides a refreshing and welcome atmosphere. Now, I'm going to show you something else. A lot of people have had problems with what is generally referred to as either hallucinations or factuality. Those are two different concepts. I do like making sure people understand the difference between them. Hallucinations are when an AI will make up an answer, even if it doesn't have one. There are reasons it does that, especially depending on the model behind it. And factuality is just when it gives wrong answers. But some of the things that I'm pointing out is that right now, all of the answer I got here is based on the YouTube transcript. So I've got one video over here that it's watching, and that's the only one. So let's ask it a question that it won't know about. So why should I visit, Accra, Ghana? Now, for those who don't know, totally different city, totally different country. You'll notice it just comes back and says, we don't have any information, so I can't provide it. Very, very important to understand that the design behind this is you're building a RAG, or basically a retrievable augmented model, generated model, only based on the sources that are here. And you can very quickly add up to 300 sources. You can add your own documents. You can add your own videos from Drive. You can use publicly available materials, etc. Very, very useful. So I think it's important to show you that it can do it. You can also do some great things, like you can ask it to compare documents. So if I could find another video that talked about a different city, I could maybe ask it, like, why should I visit this city versus this other city? Lots of great little comparative capabilities, but the ability to do things very quickly. And, if you imagine you're trying to learn about a city or something like that, and I can find, 8 hours of videos, I can throw them in there and start asking questions and do so in a few seconds without even watching the 10 hours of videos. If you're like me, I'm a more visual learner so I like to read things. I don't like to, do videos and things like that. This opens up so many capabilities. All right, moving on, let's jump over to another tool. So this one's Gemini. It's known as the app. The Gemini app is, this is the web version. As I talked about before, we are using the Gemini Advanced, which tells me that I'm using a licensed version of the product. And what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to do a quick image generation. So let's try draw me a picture of I'll use football stadium in, let's see what it does. And what I think is pretty amazing about this, and I do like to make sure I mention, up until like last April, I had called it Image Gen. It's Imagine. So this is Google's model. Imagine 3.0 is what they're using to create images. It's amazing how quick you can create these images. I know I have this warning later on, but while it's generating, I will simply mention that it is not a database. This is not using real pictures. This is AI generated. I can ask it to do other things. I have no idea why there's so many people on the field and stuff like that. So I might not like this image, but in a few seconds, I can create images that are copyright free and also, just copyright free is the key point. But I do like to mention that that can present some issues depending on what you're doing with that data, the pros and cons. So like, for example, if I'm doing a presentation and I add some images from AI, I don't have to worry about the attribution. If I'm writing a research paper, you want to make sure you cite that that's AI generated, things like that, follow your normal citation rules. But depending on how much of your material is AI generated, you could have problems getting copyrights, holding patents and things like that. There is no clear line in the sand for this in the US. In the rest of the world, I'm not aware of anything. What I like to tell people is that it's going to have to do with the percentage of how much human work was involved to how much computer work was involved. So, for example, I like talking about the movie Toy Story from Pixar. Toy Story is the first full-length CGI animated film in the theaters. So, it's completely computer generated. Now, is anybody going to argue that Toy Story doesn't deserve a copyright, that it wasn't original artwork, that the computer did a lot of the work, but it wasn't, the artistic part of the design? I don't think so. So Pixar can have a copyright. That's one extreme. Down on the other stream, one of the examples I've had used is I use some AI pictures real quickly and I create a calendar and then I print the calendar. Can I get a copyright on that calendar? Probably not, because you just spent a few seconds generating some images. So pros and cons, like I said, about what your use case is, what you need to do with it. But let's ask another question. So, sorry, I need to go back to Gemini. I'm going to ask it a question about one of my customers. I'm going to say, what is the stock symbol for HubSpot? And, that's going to very quickly go out to the internet, get me an answer. Some of the things I do like pointing out is that it will give you specific specific information. It will tell you what it's doing. It will give you more information about where it got the result. You can understand the results as well. But the stock symbol for HubSpot is Hubs. All right. So now I'm going to give it a more complex question, much more towards something you might actually want to use in a research paper. So I'm going to say, make me a plot line graph of the closing price for the past 75 days for NYSE : Hubs. I happen to know that's how you should write a specific exchange and then their stock symbol. And let's add something else and a lot of times when I'm writing slides and things like that, I want to use a consistent color scheme. I'm going to tell it to use using blue, red, and white. No idea what this is going to look like. But some of the things I want to point out is it's telling you what it's doing. It's you can go ahead and click show code, which I'll do it. It's telling you it can't access the stock pricing. So it's trying to do it. Now it says it's found the stock pricing. It's trying to get it. Try again later. It might issue itself. So they had some problems. Let's go ahead and try it again. I can hit up arrow and try it again. Right now, I think, as Google is getting ready for Google Next, let's see, I can hit tab. There is problems, and I do find right now, still not able to fetch the data after trying multiple sources. So let's try taking out the NYSE and let's see if that's the problem. There is a lot of art and science to this, as I mentioned. So let's just try saying the stock. So it can't do it. But notice here, it actually gives you the source code of where it will go give it. Let's try something else. Let's say plot the line graph of the price for the past year for what is it? Google. And let's take out the colors. Maybe the colors are confusing it. I don't think so. Let's try Google's own stock. I don't think that's actually the problem. I just think right now it can't get to a source for the stock data, or I've asked it for 75 days. That might be too far to go back, and I need to try like 40 days. Again, remember, we're working with public data sources and things like that. But what I do like is that we'll actually give you the Python code to work with. If I can get a line graph for this, I'll actually show you what it can do. And show me the actual data that it goes and generates. You can also hand it the data if you need to. So I could actually change my prompt to say, here's my code, please go and do it. So here's the actual code that it talks about, and it can run that code. So I can say like, run the code. So it's generated some code, and now I'm going to tell it to execute it. It's using the Y-Finance library to get the code. It's using the matplotlib, and it's customizing it and whatnot. So you can actually get code that you want to do. You can have it generate the actual graphs. You can have it show you the data that it's trying to do. So let me go ahead and get out of that thing. Let's talk at some, by the way, you'll notice it told me what it would do in Python, what libraries it would use, why it would use those libraries, how it would do it. So, you can ask it questions and think about like what if questions or how to do something. So, you can even ask it how to do something in its own code. But I like, for example, how would I research traveling to Nigeria? So you'll notice I didn't ask it to actually research. I asked it how I would research. And it's interesting to see how this can build different answers. Sometimes you can give the different prompt and get multiple answers. I like combining them sometimes. I can also tell you that we had it write an incident response plan for a CEO leaving a phone in a taxi cab or an Uber, a Lyft, something like that, and how we would handle it. And it was neat because with 6 experts on the call, it actually came back with a task to lock the SIM card, which was interesting that none of us had ever thought about it. Now I'm going to go ahead and open another window because I think I have tricked Gemini. Gemini is a contextual chat interface. And so I've gone through those different chats and I think I have confused it that I want Python code to do that query. So I'm going to go ahead here and just show it here. So here's a research plan for that topic that you can do. Now, I kind of showed this to you because this is a shortcut to other models. Now, I also have 2.5 Pro experimental. I have deep research. I have Flash. Right now, I'm using Flash. The difference between these models, there's some nuances. You can actually ask Gemini the differences between them. But like between Flash and deep research, a great explanation from Serge LaChapelle at Google is that Flash is like saying, write me a song and give me a minute to write it, versus write me a song and give me a few months to write it for deep research. So let's go ahead and with this deep research that we've got here, we've got a plan here. So it's going to search for flight options from Lynchburg, Virginia, which is where I'm at, to EO, Nigeria, including major airlines. It's going to find information on visa requirements. It's going to research hotels, look for information on safety. It's going to investigate health recommendations and required vaccinations. It's going to find information about local culture, customs, and languages spoken. It's going to explore popular attractions, and it's going to research transportation options there, such as taxis or ride sharing. That's a pretty good list, but I can go ahead and say, I don't really like that plan. Let's edit the research plan. What do I want to do? And I can probably say some things like remove. Let's see, or add look up U.S. State Department travel advisories. I want to know what my country is saying as far as that. And I've updated the list, so now I can do it and see that, okay, research, or somewhere in here it's going to have the State Department thing. Here it is. Look up State Department travel advisories for Nigeria. You'll notice, by the way, that it put it in context. It didn't need me to tell it about Nigeria because I'm continuing the chat that's occurring. So, over here, we can go ahead and do a new chat, and we can go back to that line graph because I think that was part of the problem. So create me a line plot graph for the stock closing price for hubs and I'll do 40 days in red, blue, and white. So hopefully you can get the stock price for this one. I only gave it 40 days. Okay, good. It says it's got the stock price. It's doing things. I'm not going to click show code yet because I want to, it's only able to do, well, I only gave it one plot. So here's that stock price plotted in red. It goes back to January 31. So that's about 60 days. I did 40 days, but we can also do things, as I mentioned before, show code. Here's the actual Python it ran to do the code. You can look for errors, trust but verify. But one of the other things I like to show is, let's go to here, and now I can actually see the data table. I can do things like, for example, scroll down. Oh, wait, it is 40 data points. I can export that to a Google Sheet. I can work with the data. I can see what's going on. You can see that's the price at midnight for the closing price, etc. So, I can look at all the data. I can look at the code it's actually running. I can look at the analysis. Where did it get this information from? I can ask it that kind of information. I can ask it for trends. I can ask it questions like, how would I determine something? I'm not a financier, so I'm not going to make up any answers, but pay attention to the sources, pay attention to how much information it's giving you that you can start to play with the data. So think of it sometimes maybe as like a proof of concept. Let's say you need to write Python code, to graph a chart. You now know how you can go get it. So, you can use those different models. I showed you if I had switched and said to use deep research, and let's do a new chat just so I don't, oh yeah, it's already done that. So, and we go back to our question, like research, the best month to visit Nigeria. Now, I was running a conference in Africa, and we were running it in Johannesburg and Ghana, in Accra, and it ended up that in one of them, one of the reasons we got such a good deal is that we were coming in the middle of the rainy season, and nobody had told me. So, that's something I've started to look at is, hey, when's a good time to visit specific countries, and things like that. And better is relative. Like, so for example, is it dry and wet? Maybe I want to visit and see, during the wet season, what happens, or I want to visit during the dry season, etc. So, you can use these plans. Now, you'll notice right away, I didn't get the research. I got a plan. Google did that automatically when I asked before about how would I research something. It switched me kind of automatically to deep research. I'm going to go ahead and say, start this research. Depending on what it's doing, this can take quite a long time. But we'll see how it's going, and we'll go back to our research. We'll come back about that. You can use another thing, which is called a Gemini gem. And I'm going to show you just real quickly about those because gems can be very useful. So over here on the gem manager, you do have quite a few pre-made gems. And so, for example, one of the ones I like is the sentiment analyzer. Now, I've got some data that I did here from a Roses and Thorns document about a storm that occurred. So I'm going to go ahead and copy one of these. I'm going to copy 3 columns. Now, these columns, what was good, what was bad, and then comments. So I kind of expect the sentiment to be a little mixed because, I'm giving it sentiment that was asked for that was overall kind of mixed. Please give me the overall sentiment for this data. And I've just literally cut and pasted it. There are some cut and paste issues, but nothing too bad. I could also ask it to look at that thing. So negative, neutral, key themes, lack of SOPs, recommendations, develop and document SOPs. So what's really, really cool about this is now let's take something that's a little more, one-sided. So I'm only going to copy the comments folder, the comments column over here, and I'm going to ask it the exact same question of Gemini. So let's go ahead and do a new chat, clear out the information. I'm going to go to the gems. I'm going to go to the sentiment analyzer, and I'm going to say, give me the overall sentiment for this data. And in a few milliseconds, it tells me this one is positive. I only gave it 1 column, but think about now, like how useful this might be in some of the things. Maybe you're doing some surveys for your research. Maybe you're looking at lots of data that was gotten from humans. I can also tell you something that leaked because I didn't leak it that will be announced in probably at next week, is that you'll be able to use AI formulas in Google Sheets. So imagine that I could literally just type something like equals AI, parentheses, give me the overall sentiment of column, E12, and then make that a formula, use something like an ongoing form with Google Forms, have it submit to a back end of a spreadsheet, have it automatically do the sentiment analyzation for you. You can go in and read it and start ranking things, looking at it, using it to help with your particular information. If you have an email like from a customer and you want to know if it's negative or positive, this can help. And things like that. There are other gems, and I will leave it as an exercise for those. Ask it how to create a custom Gemini gem. So you can ask Gemini how you can make your own first custom gem. I will mention something that's a bit of a rant, and I will put some things in the chat. If I can find the chat in here, let's see if I can find my actual StreamYard. There it is. So here is 2 links. The first one is a blog about 2.5. 2.5 just went live a few days ago. So if you want to know about the differences with 2.5, it's there. The second one is a post, which I'll bring up here. And it's a little bit of a rant about ethical and responsible AI. And it really talks about open source with AI being a lie. I use strong language there because I'm a huge fan of open source software. Using the term open source with models is a lie because open source needs a better definition in this case. But I pointed out here, no ability to reproduce the results, no available proprietary. They're using proprietary training data and they use proprietary licenses. That is not open source. That is completely opposite from open source. So do not refer to things as open source models. In my opinion, that is just marketing BS. No other way to put it. Rant. Okay, rant over. Let me also put my LinkedIn in the chat as well. I will tell you, I love talking to people. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. If you have the ability, put a note that says you met me at this event. That will help. And I do guarantee people that unlike a good AI, I can hallucinate and make factual errors 10 times better than any AI. So ask me any question and just be prepared to verify if I made it up or not. All right. Other than that, let's move on a little bit to a fun exercise. So something you can do is you can create a rock album cover. I like telling people to draw a rock album cover and then extend it with persona, task, context, and format. You can do this later. I know we're running low on time here, so I won't go into it. But for example, this is one on the right-hand side. I don't know if she's in here. She was in here earlier. This is my cat, Stella Bella Moon. I gave Gemini the prompt of draw a rock album cover with a tan tabby macro cat in the style of Metallica. I'm a little worried about the copyright on this one because that does seem to be Metallica's logo. But it named the album Perfect Storm. It created this entire thing. That's literally the entire prompt I gave it. You can do some really neat stuff, very fun stuff. And especially for those of you who are experts trying to teach other people about Gemini, about NotebookLM, about what they can do with it. This has been an exercise that people have really enjoyed playing with and showing off their animals and things like that. So some final thoughts before I move into a little bit of a live demo. Not too much. I don't have a whole lot of time, but I am not worried that AI is a replacement for writing. It's an amazing tool. You'll notice, like, for example, that I'm paying attention to sources. If I was doing a research paper, I would be looking very carefully at who my sources are. I would probably be bringing in data from Wikipedia and then looking through it. I would be asking for resources. I would be looking at the veracity of those resources. I would be asking for information about the authors of those resources and things like that. And think about how quickly Gemini can do that for you when you would have had to do it manually. But I just view this as, for example, we went from clay tablets and styluses to, abacuses to mechanical calculators to electronic calculators to the spreadsheet. And I don't know about you guys, but I rarely touch a real calculator anymore. I fire up a spreadsheet and do all my calculations there. I have a feeling AI is going to replace that. Even like with Gmail and minor things like with Gemini, I don't even use the search anymore. I ask Gemini to find the emails for me, and you can do that kind of stuff. So you can ask it questions about your own files. We'll do that as a final thing here. But those who are experts, I do worry about training bias. Training bias is a really big problem. You have to be aware of bias all around. So, for example, one of the problems that I find in the Western world is that we aren't training on enough data that is, for example, Chinese, Russian, and Arabic. And so we've got a bias towards Western anglicized writings. That's a problem. We've also got other biases just by what data is not included. And so when you're asking a question, like, for example, you saw me ask NotebookLM a question, you have to be aware I'm only getting opinions from that one presentation. So I might want to go and find, 10 more presentations. I might want to find some official ones from Nigeria. I might want to find a Nigerian tourism board. I might want to find some from some companies. I might want to find some negative reviews where people said, I had a bad time, here's why, and put them all together. So I'm getting multiple sources. And, then I can start making decisions based on what the source was. Additionally, something that I've seen, so I've worked in AI for almost 30 years now. One of the biggest problems that I come in is I get hired a lot to fix AI systems. I'll just leave it broad like that. And one of the biggest problems I find is that they're doing auto training, and then that auto training does reinforcement. What do I mean by that? Well, if I'm looking up data and that data is AI generated, and then I use that data I am now reinforcing that data. And that's essentially what you're doing. So the more you use that same data over and over again, the more you're pushing it towards being correct. It's the best way I can describe it. But you have to be aware of any type of auto training, any type of training on AI generated sources, as well as how that might reinforce those. I am very worried about a lack of originality. I think humans have a knack for originality. We need to keep training, keep learning, and using and expanding what humans can do. But the context is very important. For example, I do a lot of email and malware research. You can imagine if I use anything like a sentiment analyzer and stuff, it's not going to be very helpful unless it knows the context that I'm looking at it in. For example, a classifier of email, if I'm doing spam research, I don't consider the research and the emails and the spams that I'm looking at as something I don't want to see. An AI classifier is going to hide it and put it in the junk folder or block it. So again, it's a context. But I do like to mention, for example, 20 plus years ago, I wrote a search for a very large movie company, and we ended up using other contextual data when we wrote that AI-based search. One of the biggest pieces of contextual data that we used was we used whether or not a product had sold or not. And so, for example, we had a big problem with Godzilla because there's like 145 Godzilla movies, but people probably wanted, for example, maybe Godzilla 2000, or they wanted Godzilla versus whatever that was recent. And so based on sales data, we could start to bring in contextual AI based things. So we used patterns of behavior to then change what the search results were for people searching for generic terms, because that was probably more likely what they wanted. That doesn't always work. Now, I've only got a few minutes. I'll skip the bank story and I'll tell the zip code story. So a very large company I won't name here used their star employees to gather resumes. They put those resumes into a model, and then new applicants, they basically asked the model to say, is this a star applicant compared to our star resume database? And what was interesting is they found that it had a pretty bad bias in it. Now, nobody intended to make a bias in it. The learning on the data actually ended up picking some data that was different because it needed to find some differences. It picked up on the zip code. And what happened is the vast majority of all the employees for that company lived in a very small subset of zip codes. And so what ended up happening was that the comparison to the star database ended up basically kind of, a lot of people had the same, skill set. So then it started saying, okay, who lives closer? Now, maybe you want that, maybe you don't. But if you don't know what the context is and you don't know what the AI is doing to make those comparisons, it can be very troublesome. They had to actually cancel using any AI screening in their process because they killed so many applicants from the process just because of where they lived. Anyway, we've already talked about the copyrights and patents stuff. So I love this quote from Rich. He's our VP of Cloud and our CISO here at Dido, but very, very true. Look at the sources, look at the information that Google is telling you, look at how it's giving you that information. So in my last few minutes here, we'll talk about how I can put that all together. So first of all, let's go look at Gemini here. So you'll notice here, it's completed the research. It has decided that the optimal time to visit EO, I think it's EO, Nigeria, and it's given me an executive summary, an introduction, the climate. It's given me detailed weather analysis. You'll notice, by the way, I can click here and get the actual sources. Very important that you have those citations. The hottest months, February and March, experience higher than average. So you guys are dying there right now. My gosh, 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 35 degrees Celsius is what I meant to say. Et cetera. And I can look at the rain, et cetera, number of rainy days, et cetera. So this is really, really good information. I'd love to hear from people after the speech is done, whether or not they thought it had some interesting information. Some of the nice things you can do, by the way, with notebooks that I didn't talk about is you can do things, where's my notebook? Here, you can share that. You can get analytics based on it. Once you get more than a number of people shared in it, you can decide that, ooh, I like this. Let's add this to the notes over here or put it in the clipboard. And now it's over here so other people can read what I did on these sources. You can have people collaborate on it. Again, collaboration is one of Google's biggest skills. You can use the information that you got out of Gemini and do other things with it. You could probably even tell it, I don't know for sure, create a notebook out of this. If you can't do it, I can tell you it's soon, but you can do things. You'll notice, like, for example, export this to a Google Doc. And immediately now I have a Google Doc I can work with. I can use all the grammar, all the spelling checking, all the sharing, all the ability to create a building block, turn this into an email, etc. And I can also do other things like, for example, I can just ask it questions now. And by the way, you'll notice I got nice citations at the bottom. They may not be in the format you need. You might have to put them in the right format, but they're really trying to approach this from a research basis. But we can let's just ask it something like, what are the top 3 takeaways from this document? Now, this is a bit of what I would call a training bias. I've got an AI generated document that I'm now asking it information about it. And so I don't know that I'd use that generally. I might edit the document, make sure it's in an order, but you'll notice it talks about the optimal visit time, the tropical monsoon climate, and significant cultural events. This is a good one. I mean, like, for example, a lot of people might want to visit Rio during Carnival. So maybe there's a similar type of event that occurs in Nigeria that I want to be there for. And a lot of people who travel and go to things like carnivals know that they run in different weeks in different countries. So that would be a good question. You'll notice, by the way, it gives the sources and things like that. So very, very useful. But you're using AI all the time with grammar, spelling, spam. I do like pointing something out that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, especially something like an AI paper reading group. So the generative AI in Gemini is based on a product or a white paper called Transformer. Transformer was created, I think, in 2015 at Google. 99% sure that I didn't have time last night to find the year. And that paper that was published in 2017 is actually what ChatGPT was based on. So Google themselves wrote the white paper that created ChatGPT. Kind of a neat thing. And on top of that, Google has been using those concepts for what is now almost 10 years. So Google Translate uses Transformer. A wonderful technique that you might need in your research paper writing is you might need to translate it to multiple languages. There are some other tips I can give you. Like, for example, I like to stay away from idioms and local phrases. I like to use very simple words, try not to get too many long words in my document, too many industry specific words, make sure all my acronyms are spelled out, et cetera, and check the acronyms when they're translated. I'll tell you why in a second. But one of the great tips you can do is you go across multiple continents. So I write in English primarily. So I'll go to English, I'll translate it into something like Spanish, then I'll translate it into Chinese, and then I'll translate it back to English. By going across those multiple continents of language and different types of languages, I can then see, is the basic gist of my document still there? If it's not, I probably will have a document that's difficult to translate. And most translation services will use a tool like Google Translate before they switch to manually cleaning it up and making it better. So very similar to how you write a research paper these days, that's how they'll do translation. So a great tip. Now, there was something I was mentioning there. I forgot it. Oh, well, but it's a little tip there. But let's go ahead and finalize this up. I can also do, the slide deck here, and I can basically go to here and I could ask it for a summary, but let's do create the top 4 takeaways I don't have to give it any context. I'm sorry, because it's in the document. Now, the nice part is I have to do this all the time. I have to write a presentation. I wrote this entire presentation. It's all hand created, so I don't have any worry about training biases. And I can now take this and put it as my top 4 takeaways. So I could take that very quickly, go up to the top here, create a new slide, and cut and paste in some information. I've got it in the wrong format. Let me apply a layout real quickly. Let's just do a title and 2 columns. Good enough. And I can put top 4 takeaways. And I could compare that, for example, to Victor's 4 takeaways that he wanted me to make sure I hit. Might be something I would do to make sure that I hit the topics that he was interested in hearing about for the group. Other than that, I will, I will mention, I could write something, for example, a 2-page research paper on machine learning UO or EO. It could go out, find information, etc. You saw how I did it. You can also ask questions, like, for example, a lot of research papers people are writing in LaTeX, so maybe you need to know some questions there. So let's go to Gemini. Let's start a new chat. Let's start that chat in Flash. And let's do a how to convert Google Docs to LaTeX. And it's going to give some information. It's going to say it's tricky. But what I like is, I can use Doc to LaTeX as an add-on that can do it, can do snippets. There's some online converters as well. There's GitHub tools, important considerations, etc. So, I find that this is where I go look for answers sometimes. I can then jump out to the web, for example, now, okay, here's how I can go find some things about A-Spons, etc. And I can ask it questions like, what are some free open source tools to do this as well? I can give it more context. What is a tool for an advanced person? What is a tool for a spreadsheet to be converted? Think about those 4 things, the persona, the task, the context, and the format that I want to achieve. If I give it more information, but this is a chat, I can keep refining it and go along with it. So let's do another chat. Let's do one last demo. We're doing a thing where we're adding a hat to our logo. So draw a stuffed animal of a falcon. Let me give it a specific falcon, peregrine falcon, that is eating an ice cream cone. Now, I do mention it's not a database. There are no pictures of peregrine falcons out there eating an ice cream cone. So, this should be pretty interesting to see what it does, because, the situation that you've got here is not anything there. But I think that's a pretty good stuffed animal of a peregrine falcon eating a ice cream cone. Let's try a contextual thing. I've not tried this. Add a hat. And, you can start thinking about a conversation. It's in context with what you're doing. That's one of the problems. I forgot I said show code earlier in that other demo that I did. And I realized it was trying to give me Python code for my answers. And then I switched gears. Now you'll notice now I have a completely different picture of a peregrine falcon eating an ice cream cone. It's still a stuffed animal, and it's now got a hat on it. So, use it for what you will. It's pretty amazing stuff. I think the things are there. There are some significant resources here. I will put 2 more of these in the chat, and I am starting to worry. I did put that one there. So I will give the slides to Victor so that he can share them out. I do teach technical writing for Google. I teach it about once a quarter. The 2 have already occurred this quarter in February and March. Google Next is next week, so it will probably start up in April and May. But if you're interested, especially if you're an AI expert, I am doing a class that I wrote on writing with AI. I call it Technical Writing 3. So I'm using all of the concepts in Technical Writing 1 and 2 and showing how I accelerate them using something like this, these tools that I've showed you today with Gemini for Workspace. Other than that, if you'd like to email me, you can write me at askcam@ditoweb.com. Again, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and the slides will be shared. So I think we're a little over 11:07. I apologize. Let me go ahead and stop the screen sharing. Victor? I don't know if Victor can hear me. Are there any questions?
Okay. Um, that was a really, really session,
Thank you.
and I I've really learned a lot from that that session, and talking about the say how we can use conclusion. What are your last words for the session?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me, Victor. I will make sure to send you the slides here in a few minutes. And thank you for having me. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day.
All right, thank you. So
Bye.
I have few. All right, all right.
No, no, if you have questions, I have time. Do you have some questions?
Yes, I do. So the question I have is, I know you have done like an advanced research, or let me say, an advanced comprehensive overview of using Google Workspace to write research papers. So can we actually depend on this, or looking at the architectural workflow? Can Gemini or AI at large write this research paper from scratch to finish and include all references? That is like the question I have in mind. And also, if we are to, if we are to, if we are to, um, if we are to, let me say, build a system like this, what would you advise to people that are coming in or that wants to start in the AI space?
Yeah, so I think two things there. The first thing that I would do is I would probably not use Gemini to write my research paper if that's actually my deliverable. In like, for example, I'm in school, but for example, a lot of research projects go for a long time, months, years. And imagine if you were able to, like, for example, all your data into Notebook LM. Imagine you were able to put all of the research papers that might have come before you at school into Notebook LM, and then you can ask it questions about your own data, about that data, and just like for example, you can put you know multi 300 documents in there that are hundreds of pages each, and you can ask it a question that might be hidden somewhere in there, like uh, you know what was the results in 20,000 in 2012, and it can just give you that answer. It'll give you the source. It'll jump you to where it is in that document, so you can use it just to find data. You can use it to create a layout, to create a framework for what you want to fill out, things like that. You saw I did the research on what's the best time to uh, to um, to visit, your town, and it very quickly gave me a very full filled out research paper. So the big thing I would say for those though that getting started with AI is just start experimenting with it. I love the exercise of creating a rock album with your pets. Start exploring, start asking it questions, start seeing what it can do and not do. Ask it questions about what it can do and not do. Talk to your colleagues about how they've been able to use it. It is so new that I'm learning from other people using it, who are teaching me, like, "Hey, did you know it could do that?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't. That's awesome." So that it's I could teach 2 semesters of classes. I'm not exaggerating, on all the little features and all the nuances. And just like, for example, if you need to do a pivot table in Sheets, make me a pivot table. Something that used to take me 5 to 10 minutes to design, it can do in milliseconds. It's crazy how well it works. All right.
Okay, that's really cool. I mean, thank you very much. Thank you so much. At this point, you are going to call it a day. I have the links to the session, and will be. I'll reach out to you if there are any other questions from the community, and as well, I'm going to share the link. Yeah, so anybody outside there can as well join the that anybody outside there can use this resource. We are going to post it across different channels.
Wonderful. Thank you, Victor.
All
Have a
right.
nice day,
So
everybody.
all right. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.